This is the Crisis Era from the Free Body Problem books. I am gonna do this by starting at the later events from the show before diving into the main scenes from the second book, in which the Crisis Era mainly takes place. The book content starts in just a minute. Let's do this. Prologue. End of the Common Era. The Crisis Era begins with the Sophon reveal. The Shanti or Trisolarans let the Earth know that they have sent two Sophons to them, which are basically proton-sized supercomputers that they are able to unfold. They need them to spy on the Earth in real time, as well as to block human progress in science, thus stopping it from evolving. This is important since their 1,000-ship fleet is gonna arrive in about 400 years. Then the Sophons go crazy, everyone starts to panic, and so the Crisis Era begins. The first scene we need to talk about is the cemetery scene. Luoji in the books or Sol in the show has a conversation with Yi Wenjie, the woman who made the first contact with the Shanti or Trisolarans. She explains the basics of cosmic sociology to him, mentioning stuff like the so-called chain of suspicion, and highly recommends him to look into all of that. A single ant and a spider are the only witnesses of their conversation besides the Sophons. There is a reason why many consider this scene as one of the most important one in the whole series, and we're definitely gonna talk about it again. For now, let's move on. Year 3 of the Crisis Era. To outsmart the Sophons who are able to spy in real time, the Wallfacer project is launched by the UN. Because of the fact that Sophons can read minds, a small group of extraordinary strategists are appointed to be Wallfacers. These people have a nearly unlimited authority and have the right to not explain their next move at the same time. The only rule is that they can't violate international law or human lives. And here is where the show goes into a different direction that needs to be talked about. Let me explain what I mean by that. Their book versions are different. In the books, 4 people are appointed to be Wallfacers, which are Frederick Taylor, a former US Secretary of Defense, Ray Diaz, current president of Venezuela, and Bill Hines, a neuroscientist, basically an expert when it comes to the human brain. Last but not least, Luoji. His counterpart in the show is Saul, by the way. While in the show, there are only 3 Wallfacers, which are General Hu Bolin and Professor Leila Eric. Both of these people share a military background. The third one is Saul, of course, who I'm just gonna call by his book name Luoji from now on. It is also here when someone tries to assassinate him with a sniper rifle shortly after he leaves the UN building. The sniper who gets arrested belongs to the Earth Trisolaris Organization, or ETO, though they never get called ETO in the show, at least not in season 1. This is the second assassination attempt on him since the car incident right before the launching of the Wallfacer project. The Staircase Project. You've probably seen the whole Staircase project in the show by now, and since it takes place in the third book, I want to save it for another video. We're gonna leave it for now. The world, the ETO, as well as the Sophons all know about the Wallfacer project by now, so the ETO begins to appoint their own counterparts for each Wallfacer, the Wallbreakers. Each Wallbreaker needs to study the Wallfacer they are appointed to, so that they can find out their real plans and expose them to everyone, thus making them useless. They are allowed to use the Sophons to spy on them as well, since the ETO is the only allied Trisolaris or the Shanti have on Earth. The only Wallfacer they don't appoint a Wallbreaker to is Luoji, saying that he is his own Wallbreaker. If I remember correctly, that is a specific order coming from Trisolaris or Shanti themselves. More on that later. By now, the Wallfacers all begin to construct their plans. Luoji though doesn't give a F about the project for this whole time straight. Matter of fact, he kinda abuses his new power to get his hands on a nice house in a nice location with a lake near it, to live the rest of his life in it. He also uses his new status so that Xiqiang, this guy, can find him a girl he can live with. All this with that this is part of the plan energy. This is one of the funniest parts in the whole series, but damn, it used to annoy the shit out of me the first time I got into the books. He actually finds him his dream girl, however, and they eventually get married and have a daughter. Year 8 of the Crisis Era. Someone knocks on Wallfacer Tyler's door, saying the infamous words, "I am your Wallbreaker." Then the guy begins to expose Tyler's whole secret plan, which is basically to pretend to be a secret ally of the ETO organization, infiltrate the future human space fleet with his new allies so that they can turn on them by attacking them when the aliens finally arrive. Then they would give the Trisolaran fleet a gift to gain their trust, which is basically a giant piece of frozen water, since water is a resource they would need to rely on, especially after a 400-year journey through space. Once that's all done, he would remote control the ships of the corrupted human fleet and basically blow everything up, killing the Trisolarans as well as the corrupted ships. Tyler's plan was made public and he fell into a dark hole. He then visits Luochi to tell him about the whole incident and kills himself with a pistol on Luochi's compound later on. And so, the first Wallfacer has fallen. Meanwhile, Wallfacer, Heinz and Diaz are realizing that the technology they need for their plans has not been developed yet, so they both enter cryosleep. Diaz needs hydrogen stellar bombs, and Heinz a supercomputer he needs to construct mental seals. More on that later. The UN finally decides that Luochi should take his position as Wallfacer seriously. They force his wife and daughter into hibernation, saying you will see them in the Doomsday Battle. It works and Luochi finally begins to work on his own plan. He presents his plan to the UN. He wants to use the sun to send a signal he calls a spell into the universe. A spell against the planets of a star who are about 50 light years away from our sun. He also says that he's going into hibernation and that they should wake him up when they discover that the spell worked. By the way, the ETO still tries to kill him. This time they used a virus that can only harm Luochi, but long story short it fails. This is assassination attempt number 3. Year 12 of the Crisis Era. A decade earlier, a super telescope called Hubble 2 discovered the Trisolaran fleet in the universe making their way to Earth. However, this time in year 12 there was something else it discovered. Along with the 1,000 ships were about 10 much smaller ones moving at much higher speed, each one about the size of a truck. They began to call them probes. Due to the delay in time and space, they were looking at a picture from 4 years ago, and find out that the exact day those probes were launched from their motherships was the day that Luochi attended the Wallfacer hearing in year 8 in which he talked about casting the spell, on the exact day that the ETO has received second command from Trisolaris to kill Luochi ASAP, which led to the virus incident. What exactly are these probes and why do the Trisolarans want to kill Luochi so badly? Meanwhile, Zhang Beihai, who is Rush in the show, has kinda become the new spearhead when it comes to building up the new space fleet. He even shoots 3 people all in open space near a space station with meteorite bullets, so humanity learns to adapt to the potential dangers in space more quickly and goes into hibernation. Year 20 of the Crisis Era. Diaz and Heinz awake from hibernation. They're being told that the technologies they require has now been developed. Heinz needs the supercomputer to construct mental seals. It's basically a method of brainwashing someone so the military forces believe in absolute human victory over Trisolaris no matter the circumstances. He opens the so-called Faith Center, leaving it up to the military members themselves on whether they want to receive the mental seal or not. If so, they can just pull up and get it. Diaz, on the other hand, needs stellar hydrogen bombs. He needs those to carve a giant hole into Mercury's surface so they can build a base on it, which should function as backup place for humans once the Doomsday Battle begins. Or so he says at least. Diaz, who lives in a guarded underground basement because of his helophobia, which is the fear of sunlight, gets visited by a man who claims to be his personal psychologist. Once in Diaz's presence, the man says, "Ray Diaz, I am your wall breaker." And once again, a wallbreaker begins to expose the whole secret plan of a Wallfacer out loud, which in Diaz's case is the following. He doesn't need hydrogen stellar bombs to carve a hole into Mercury so a base can be built on it. He wants to straight up blow Mercury up so that it falls into the sun, causing a chain reaction in which every planet in the solar system falls into the sun as well, one after another. The Earth included, of course. The Trisolaran fleet would not have the opportunity to migrate onto another planet anymore. Earth was their only hope. It's no secret that the 3 stars surrounding their planet would kill them eventually. Death for both species. It's an extreme version of the Scorched Earth strategy, which was used by the Russians in World War II when the Germans invaded Russia, for example. Burn everything up that could function as resource or lifesaver for the invading enemies. Once everything for his plan was set up and ready to go, he would use it to convince Trisolaris to surrender, leading into ultimate victory for humanity. What follows next is one of my favorite parts of the whole Crisis Era arc. After the Wallfacer is done explaining that Dia's plan was impossible to begin with, saying that even a million bombs would not have been enough to cause the chain reaction, Dia straight up falls into a psychotic rage in which he nearly kills the Wallbreaker. The guards actually had to step in and pull him away. "Kill him," Dia screams. "Kill him. This is part of the plan." At the next Wallfacer hearing, people demand the suspension of Diaz and that he's put on a trial for crimes against humanity. The reason why Tyler was never charged for his plan, which also included killing humans, was because his plan was in a too early stage to actually prove it. Diaz's wasn't. However, things take a very interesting turn at this hearing. Diaz claims that he knows the CIA has placed men outside to arrest him as soon as the hearing is over. He lifts his arm, showing a wristband that transmits a signal. He says that he tied a dead man switch to his heartbeat, blood pressure, and voice command. Long story short, he could detonate a giant bomb placed in New York City whenever he wishes, and they actually confirm the signal coming from his wristband. Diaz demands are to return to his home country, Venezuela, safely. The chair of the Wallfacer hearing comes with him. Once outside, he opens his arms, embracing the sun. His xenophobia was gone. Once on the plane on his way back to Venezuela, Diaz reveals to the chairman that his whole dead man switch bomb thing was fake. The signal they detected from his wristband was actually a part of a Motorola phone he put in it. They have been played. Once the plane arrived in Venezuela and Diaz and the chairman were about to part ways, Diaz says one last thing to him. "Don't abort the Wallfacer project. It really is a hope in this war. There are still 2 Wallfacers. Please wish them the best from me." He walks off to his city, Caracas, to a giant statue of Simon Bolivar, a hero of his country that freed them from the Spanish conquerors centuries earlier. And then it happened. A giant crowd gathered around him, all outraged by his evil plan that already has been made public by then. And then they begin to stone him to death. And so, the second Wallfacer has fallen. Diaz's plan was definitely evil, and it was definitely not the best one, but in terms of personality, he's my favorite Wallfacer. Bro was a savage. Everything up until now was one hell of a build-up, but from here on is where this whole arc really begins to kick in my opinion. Year 205 of the Crisis Era. Luoji awakes from hibernation and gets a quick briefing from the characters around him. He's been in cryosleep for 185 years. Obviously, a lot of things have changed, so let me go over the most significant ones. It turns out that the now completed human space fleet consists of 2,000 ships and is stationed between Jupiter and Saturn. These spaceships can go 15% of light speed, which is even faster than the Trisolaran ships. They are equipped with machine guns that can shoot 10,000s of rounds the size of a football per minute and have laser beams that can cut an aircraft carrier in half. Plus, telescopes have discovered that the Trisolaran fleet needs to pass through dust clouds in order to get to the solar system, which slowed them down significantly. Only 300 of their 1,000 ships will arrive on Earth at the estimated time. One of the 10 probes, however, is gonna arrive at the solar system pretty soon. Cities are now built 1,000 meters underground with a fake sky and sun, which are images they managed to display underground, creating a projection. Wallfacer Heinz and his wife have also woken up around the same time Luoji did, and together they attend the final Wallfacer hearing. All the major countries have declined in power. The space fleet has now most of the world power and is divided into 3 parts: Asian, European, and North American. And a branch of it has inherited the Wallfacer project from the UN. It also turns out that the ETO has been completely wiped out by now. In the hearing, they basically announced that the project is now officially over and deemed as a failure. However, as soon as everyone is preparing to leave, something strange happens. Heinz's wife, Keiko Yamasuki, turns to him and says, "I am your wallbreaker." And here we go again. Keiko Yamasuki, now revealed as the last surviving member of ETO, exposes the secret truth behind Heinz's mental seal plan. The mental seal's hidden purpose was not to make its wielder believe in absolute victory. In fact, quite the opposite. It makes its wielder believe that humanity stands no chance against Trisolaris, meaning they believe in escapism. They believe that the only way for humanity to survive is to get the F out of the solar system and migrate onto somewhere else. It is worth noting that escapism was deemed as illegal shortly after the crisis era began. Thousands of people, most of them belonging to the military, received the mental seal when Heinz opened the Faith Center in year 20. His wallbreaker wife asks the people in the hearing what happened to the mental seal during their absence in hibernation. It turns out that the people that received it formed some sort of cult called the Imprinted, and nobody actually knows where they now are. It is totally possible that they infiltrated the space fleet by now, hiding and expanding in the shadows. If that's true, everything was going according to Heinz's secret plan. Heinz already lost his wall-facer status shortly before being exposed by his wife, and he wasn't charged for anything. We're gonna see more of him later though. For now, let's switch to Luoji. By the way, I forgot to mention that Luoji was not awakened because his spell worked or anything like that. Just wanted to mention that. Anyway, Luoji and Zhiqiang have reunited in this new era, and Zhiqiang shows him around in this new time. During this, a number of very strange incidents begin to happen. Flying cars are actually a thing by now, and one just straight up smashes into where they both were standing, barely missing Luoji. Zhiqiang manages to push him away though. The car was empty. The police think it was just a traffic incident. Zhiqiang still decides to report the incident. Right after that, another flying car heads dangerously close to Luoji before flying away again. Here's another one. Just as Luoji was about to step on it, a sewer automatically opened and he nearly fell into it. Zhiqiang manages to grab him just as he was about to fall into it and saved him again. Otherwise he would have fell into a 30-meter deep hole. I'm afraid it's not over yet. This one is the creepiest one. They were in a restaurant when it happened. A robot waiter seems to have a misfunction and nearly stabs Luoji with a dinner knife, barely missing him and hitting his chair. Once again, he is saved by Zhiqiang's reflexes. And you've guessed it, it's not the last incident. Zhiqiang takes Luoji to his living quarter. Luoji is exhausted by now and asks Zhiqiang if he has some sleeping pills. Zhiqiang doesn't have them but decides to order them real quick. And a delivery drone brings him the pills shortly after. He hands them to Luoji. As Luoji was about to take one, Zhiqiang notices by inspecting the package that those were not the ones he ordered. It turns out that those were hibernation pills that can make you hibernate from 10 days to a year. And if you take one without the right setup, it can straight up kill you. Very strange. Okay, one last incident and then we get to the bottom of it. So Luoji sits on the sofa in Zhiqiang's living quarter, seconds after the pill incident, and I shit you not, he was nearly killed by the freaking sofa as his head sunk too deep in it. The sofa formed some sort of strings from its parts around his neck. Once again, Zhiqiang saved his life. They finally contact the police, who were actually investigating everything this whole time. The reason for all these incidents is a modified virus called Killer 5.2. The virus was launched by the ETO a century earlier specifically to target Luoji, but because he was in hibernation, it activated itself only recently. They deactivate the virus and recommend Luoji to live on the surface for his own safety. Zhiqiang comes with him. Okay, so when Luoji woke up from hibernation, the number of assassination attempts on his life was at 3. Now it sits at 9. I promise you that we're gonna get to the reason for why they wanna kill him so badly later on. Another thing I forgot to mention is the wife and child of Luoji. Ever since he awakened from hibernation, he had permission to awaken them as well, but was recommended to build up his new life first, which is now his new goal. For now, we're gonna do a short switch to Zhang Beihai's POV, since he has been awakened from hibernation too by now. When Zhang Beihai went into hibernation, the Imprinted, remember those people who secretly believe in escapism, weren't a thing, and the space fleet needs trustworthy people who have actual faith in humanity. Plus, he's a great military mind, so he's been promoted to be a vice captain within one of the space fleet ships. That ship is called Natural Selection. In space, he meets the captain of Natural Selection, meaning his new boss, who is described as an attractive woman. Hell yeah. Anyway, back to Luoji for now. The Great Ravine. Luoji and Zhiqiang have made it to the surface, and Zhiqiang actually reunites with his son, who is now about the same age as he is, only 5 years younger. The surface is now more like one big desert, and mostly covered in sand, with people riding in normal cars on it. Most people on the surface come from the same era as they do. Not many people live on the surface though. They go into a nearby village, where Zhiqiang's son lives with his family, and then they begin to talk about the Great Ravine. About 20 years after Logi went into hibernation, it happened. Even though the Sophons blocked most of the essential breakthroughs in science, humanity spent most of its resources on evolving as fast as they could. Things like building up the new space fleet and so on, which basically caused a Great Depression on steroids. A dark age of famine and misery that lasted for about 50 years. During this, humanity's population went from 8.3 billion to 3.5 billion. This is the reason why most of the surface has changed into a desert. After that, humanity slowly began to recover and focus back on the Trisolaran crisis. Okay, we're getting closer and closer to what many describe as one of their favorite events of this whole series. Anyway, it's now back to Cjbeards and his space fleet storyline. The Natural Selection Incident. The captain of Natural Selection, that attractive woman I was simping over a few minutes earlier, instructs Cjbeards, now a vice captain on the control system of Natural Selection, and the potential dangers that could come from the imprinted. She also explains the deep sea state to him. So when a spaceship accelerates at max speed, the cabins of the whole crew are flooded with an oxygen-rich, breathable fluid to withstand the high speed coming from acceleration, which also puts the crew into a sleep-like state. That's the deep sea state. Remember when Luochi woke up from hibernation and they said that one of the 10 probes from Trisolaris is gonna arrive pretty soon? Yeah, so according to the telescopes, it's actually here now, coming closer and closer to the space fleet that is mainly stationed between Jupiter and Saturn. It will arrive in just a few days. After a few internal disputes, the space fleet decides to send a tracking ship that would examine the probe. This would be the first physical contact with Trisolaran technology, besides their gaming devices, I guess. Back on Natural Selection, something strange happens. Out of nowhere, Cjbeards begins to prepare the ship to go max speed, ordering everyone to go into deep sea state immediately. They try to get him from the control system, but he shuts down the door, with only him and the captain in it. She immediately suspects that he's either imprinted or ETO, but that's actually not the case here. Then who are you? She asks. I am a soldier, carrying out his duty to fight for humanity's survival, he says. The captain has no choice but to order everyone into deep sea state. Where are we going? She asks. Wherever we're going, it's a more responsible choice than to stay here, he answers. They enter deep sea state. And with that, Natural Selection falls out of the formation to get the F out of the solar system. The fleet sends 4 ships to pursue them. Shortly after that, Cjbeards restores communication. He speaks with the fleet commander of the Asian fleet. Beihai, suspected of treason, explains why he did all of this. He is sure that humanity is doomed to fail on the battlefield against Trisolaris. He just wanted to save one of its best ships and establish a new civilization outside of the solar system. Remember, he's not imprinted. The metal seal wasn't a thing during his time. However, the fleet commander is confident that once the rest of the 2,000-man crew on Natural Selections awakens, the problem would solve itself eventually. So is Cjbeards. Okay, so long story short, Beihai got scared and peaced out. Is he right though? Stay tuned. The party. Back on Earth, the mood is completely different. Luochi watches the news. The telescopes have discovered something. All of the Trisolaran warships but one were slowing down significantly. That one ship, however, never reduced speed and would actually arrive 50 years earlier at the solar system than the rest of the fleet. That could only mean one thing: it's coming for peace negotiations, which increases humanity's belief in victory. They actually launch fireworks and begin to make plans in case Trisolaris would surrender, and activists who feel sorry for Trisolaris begin to speak out for them. The European, Asian, and North American fleet decided to combine their forces, creating one big stellar army of over 2,000 ships to examine the now arrived probe. Everyone on Earth, including Luochi's village, is in party mood. Luochi is not sure though, and so is another man he reunites with at this exact moment, Bill Hines. They hug each other. Hines explains that his wife has taken her own life, but there is another thing that darkens his mood. Hines had given his own mental seal to himself a long time ago, and so still believes in escapism and defeatism, and therefore was everything else but in party mood. He seems to be a broken man. The Droplet. A physicist called Dingy from one of the fleet ships called Quantum, who is also described as Einstein looking, insists upon being a member of the team which is gonna examine the probe at first hand. By now, a first picture of the probe that is now standing still has been made from a 500-kilometer distance. He looks at the picture. The probe is 3.5 meters long and has the shape of a perfect teardrop. It perfectly reflects everything that shines on it. It looks beautiful, like a work of art, symbolizing something very important for both species: water. A beautiful gift to humanity to make up for peace, and so the name for it went from probe to Droplet. They planned the examine mission. An unmanned ship called Mantis, equipped with a robot arm, is gonna examine the Droplet from a safe distance. If nothing happens, Dingy and his team are gonna board Mantis to actually examine it. Before he goes though, he suggests to his ship Quantum to go into deep sea state, just for good measure. Another ship called Bronze Age does the same. Make sure to remember the names of these two ships. Mantis begins to examine the Droplet. The event is being live broadcasted to the over 3 billion people on Earth and to the 1.2 million people of the fleet. Everyone is watching. When the mechanical arm of Mantis finally touched the Droplet, nothing happened. Mantis pulls the Droplet into its cabin and waits for 2 hours to see if it self-destructs. Nothing happened. Humanity is now sure that the Droplet is a peace gift from Trisolaris. Quantum launches the shuttle with the examination team, which are Dr. Dingy and 3 other people, so they can board Mantis to finally examine the Droplet. We get some interesting dialogue during this. Dr. Dingy, who is over 80 years old, reminisces about the past. Someone he once loved. He never bothered her though. "If I love you, what business is it of yours?" he says. As a physicist, he also regrets the Sophon block. "If we are exploring the laws, what business is it of the laws?" he says. Make sure to remember these lines. They finally arrive at Mantis and begin to board it. The examination of the Droplet can finally begin. They pull out a microscope first, but no matter how many times they increased its strength, the surface of the Droplet always remains a smooth mirror. One even slams a tool on it. No difference. Still a smooth mirror. They also touch the Droplet. Since its temperature is close to absolute zero, they had to do so with the gloves on. Still nothing happened. They come to the conclusion that the surface of the Droplet is 100 times greater than the sturdiest material in the solar system. All known substances were as fragile as paper by comparison. It could pass through the earth like a bullet through cheese. "Then what's it here for?" one asks. "Who knows? Maybe it's just a messenger. But it's here to give humanity a different message," Dingy answers. "What message?" "If I destroy you, what business is it of yours?" Silence. "Run," Dingy says. "Stupid children, run," he repeats. The rest of the team finally understands. "The fleet! Evacuate the fleet!" someone else screams. But it's too late. Due to strong interference, the broadcast signal is cut off, and then it happened. A blue halo emerged from the tip of the Droplet, turning yellow, then red, before it vanished. Then a second time, and a few more times after that. But the team never saw the second halo emerge. They were completely vaporized by the first one due to high temperature close to the sun's core. After that, the Droplet began to accelerate. Mantis began to melt and then finally exploded. The fleet saw all of this from a 1,000-kilometer distance. They think the Droplet self-destructed and felt sorrow for the team. The alarm system of the fleet couldn't realize that the Droplet was still intact and not destroyed in the explosion, now moving at 30 kilometers per second directly towards the fleet. They had no idea what was about to happen. The first ship that was directly struck by the Droplet was Infinite Frontier. Then it passed through Yuan Fong, Foghorn, Antarctica, and Ultimate, causing every ship it passed through to explode. Then it began to systematically pass through every formation of spaceship it encountered, ship after ship, row after row. It all happened so fast that nobody knew what was going on. First, they come to the conclusion that the ships are attacking each other, not knowing that it's the Droplet. The fleet command is in complete shock. The Droplet moved like a bullet fired by a gun that moved like it had its own mind. Their defense system proved to be completely useless against this invisible enemy. Some even think that this is the power of another unknown species that they haven't encountered yet, because in their minds humanity had already won the war against Trisolaris. By now, all the fleet ships have started up their engines, but it was just too late. And so, the slaughter continued. 13 minutes passed until they actually figured out what was going on. They finally discovered the Droplet, but by then, 600 of their 2,000 ships had already been destroyed. Humanity has made plans for every possible outcome of a battle against Trisolaris, but they always thought that the size of the enemy was big. But now the combined fleet had to face facts. The only enemy was a tiny probe. One drop of water out of the enormous ocean of Trisolaran strength. And this probe attacked using one of the oldest and primitive tactics known to human navies: ramming. The ships of the fleet, now knowing what was going on, finally began to attack the Droplet, first with the laser beams that were invisible to the naked eye, then with their machine guns that could flatten a mountain. I guess it won't surprise you that these attacks had zero effect. The Droplet now doubled its speed to 60 kilometers per second and just continued like nothing happened, and caught up to every ship trying to escape. However, there were two ships that actually managed to escape: Quantum and Bronze Age. They entered deep sea state before the incident even happened, cause Dingy recommended it before he went to examine the Droplet, thus giving them just enough time to escape. I've explained 2 timestamps earlier what the deep sea state is, by the way. By now, more than 1,000 ships, more than half of the fleet, had been destroyed within 20 minutes. The battlefield turned into a complete inferno, debris stretching over 10,000s of kilometers. The Droplet increased its speed even more, now going at 170 kilometers per second to continue the massacre. The last ship destroyed by the Droplet was Ark. After that, the Droplet turned into the direction in which Quantum and Bronze Age fled, but quickly abandoned its chase since they were already too far away, making them the only survivors of the battle. Besides around 60,000 people that managed to flee by boarding much smaller ships from their motherships. And of course natural selection and the 4 ships pursuing them, but we'll get to that in a minute. The Droplet now moved into the direction of the Earth. The Battle of the Droplet, now also known as the Doomsday Battle, is like a red wedding in space. It's one of the craziest moments of the whole franchise. Humanity was just so arrogant at the time and they completely overestimated themselves. Keep in mind that this whole slaughter was done by just 1 out of their 10 Droplets. Who knows what their actual warships are capable of? It's generally one of the most haunting scenes in fiction. Back on Earth, after this immense reality check, everyone starts to panic. Heinz, however, is actually doing better. His mental seal is now in perfect line with reality. Something worth noting. But for now, let's switch back to Zhang Beihai's POV. The Battle of Darkness. Back on natural selection, Zhang Beihai communicates with the 4 captains of the other ships that were tasked with pursuing natural selection. They now see him as their savior. They survived because he decided to step out of the line to flee. Bronze Age and Quantum are at the opposite side of the solar system though. More of them later. Between natural selection and the other 4 ships is a distance of about 200,000 kilometers, which is still kinda close as they put it. After seeing what just 1 Droplet is capable of, they are all sure that the Earth is doomed. They decide to rename themselves. Their new alliance is now called Starship Earth. They choose a new destination. It's a planetary system with a star and 2 gas planets where they could use those, and don't ask me how, to refill their fuel. It's 18 light years away from them. Reaching it would take around 2,000 years. From there, they would choose a new destination. The UN gave them their blessing. These 5 ships carry a total of around 5,000 people. They choose Zhang Beihai as the new leader of Starship Earth, but he refuses. He wants to stay as vice captain of natural selection, saying he reached retirement age and wants to keep interacting with the ship itself because he's just too fascinated by it. They begin to establish their own political system, even holding elections and stuff. However, everything goes downhill from here. You see, the real end boss of this series are dust clouds in space. During a meeting on natural selection, they realized that Starship Earth had to pass through multiple of those to reach their destination. That would bring their fuel down close to zero. After that, it would take 60,000 years to reach their destination instead of 2,000. That's a very big problem. But all of the fuel of the 5 ships combined would be just enough for 1 or 2 ships. It's not just the fuel, but all sorts of parts and resources that they couldn't just refill. Plus a total of 5,000 people are just too many to gather up on the 1 or 2 ships. I think you kinda see where this is going. Some people must die, or else everyone will die. They seriously considered to attack the 4 other ships to take their resources. They would do so with their H-bombs, weapons that create vibrating electromagnetic waves that could kill everyone on a ship but leaving the ship itself unharmed. But they had no idea if the other ships came to the same conclusion, or if they had the actual willpower or evilness to actually do it, or if they already see each other as threats. What they think about what they are thinking of what they are thinking, creating an endless chain of suspicion. How can this chain of suspicion be broken? Communication. On Earth perhaps, but not in space. It's all a matter of me or you. A matter of who shoots first. They begin to make first steps for their plan. While checking the weapon system, however, they see that someone has already taken control of it. Cjbeards. He had realized all of this entire time. Maybe even already when they founded their new alliance. They rush to the weapon system room, but he shuts down the door. He prepares to launch the bombs after he locked them on the 4 other ships, but all of a sudden, natural selection's alarm system goes off. Another ship, which is ultimate law, has fired first. Cjbeards just hesitated for a few seconds too long. Natural selection is doomed. In the last seconds, Cjbeards speaks his last words. It doesn't matter, it's all the same. And so, they all die. Ultimate Law has fired 3 H-bombs not only at natural selection but at all the other ships as well. One of the ships called Blue Space, however, is actually prepared for this attack. They have created a vacuum and have put all of the people in spacesuits. The vacuum nullified the effect of the H-bombs, and so they were unharmed. They quickly counterattack Ultimate Law with their lasers, burning 5 holes into Ultimate Law. They attack Ultimate Law some more, using other weapons, until it finally exploded. By the way, the captain of Blue Space is a very brilliant strategist, and in my top 3 of characters of this series. We're gonna talk about him in another video though. On the other side of the solar system, Bronze Age attacked Quantum as well. Their motive is pretty much the same, which is to take their resources. Anyway, Blue Space went to Enterprise, Deep Space and Natural Selection to take their resources. After restocking everything, Blue Space holds a funeral of all the souls lost. Over 4,200 people died. After that, Blue Space heads into an unknown direction. The Battle of Darkness is over. With only Blue Space and Bronze Age remaining, the Earth is outraged and Blue Space and Bronze Age cut off every communication to it. It is now time to enter the final stage of the Crisis Era, the Dark Forest book, end of this video. The Dark Forest reveal. The first thing Logi says after learning about the Battle of Darkness is, "I knew it, I was right, I was right." He goes full wallfacer mode again. "I have in my hands the key to human victory," he says to Cjbeards. Cjbeards recommends him to report whatever he knows to the higher ups, which might be hard since Logi is not a wallfacer anymore. They go to the mayor, but long story short, that leads to nowhere. What follows next is a countdown of the Droplet's arrival on Earth, starting at 20 hours left. The clock is ticking. Everyone is either panicking or accepting their fate. It's a real doomsday scenario. The thing is, Logi thinks that the Droplet is coming to kill him specifically, which I think is understandable since there were 9 assassination attempts on him already. He lets Cjbeards drive him into the desert. Accepting his fate and thinking this is the last moment, he says goodbye to Cjbeards and exits the car so that at least no one else will be harmed. However, Cjbeards doesn't think that the Droplet is gonna kill Logi though, so he decides to just wait in the car. Only half an hour left till the Droplet arrives. What actually ends up happening is that at a distance of 20,000 kilometers from the Earth's surface, the Droplet suddenly changed direction towards the sun. Nothing happened to Luoji at all. The Droplet had no interest in him. Instead, it positioned itself right between Earth and Sun. The reason why is to block the signal path between Earth and Sun by using electromagnetic waves, meaning it's no longer possible to use the Sun to transmit signals with it. What Cjbeards did at the beginning of this series and what Luoji did with the spell is no longer possible. Luoji goes back to Cjbeards' core, who gives him a lot of crap, laughing at him for being wrong about the Droplet's real goal. But why all of this? Why there were 9 assassination attempts on Luoji, but now, where they could finally get rid of him, they choose to do something completely different. The time has come to reveal all of that. Together they walk back into the village, where something completely unexpected happens. They encounter a giant crowd. Cjbeards exits the car to find out what's going on. He then goes back to Luoji, who is waiting in the car, and says, "Turns out they're waiting for you." After assuring to Luoji that everything is safe, he exits the car as well, and they walk towards the crowd. In year 205, nearly everything has a display on it, even clothes actually. Luoji notices that the images on the display of all of their clothes are images of him. Plus, these images of Luoji were transmitted worldwide. It's like the whole world has turned into a giant Luoji fan club. When they see him, the whole crowd walks straight up to him, where they all, one after another, knelt down. "Lord, save us," someone yells. "Angel of Justice, save humankind," someone else says. Then former Wallfacer Bill Hines shows up and says, "Dr. Luo, I've just been appointed your liaison to the UN Wallfacer Project Commission. It is my duty to inform you that the Wallfacer Project has been revived and you have been named the sole Wallfacer." To Luoji, all of what just happened leaves only one conclusion. The spell worked. It turns out that the star of the planet he sent the spell against back in year 8 has been completely wiped out and destroyed. In its place now is just a large nebula of debris. It happened 51 years ago, was observed 1 year ago, but only noticed a few hours ago. An object close to the speed of light, which they begin to call a photoid, struck the star, causing it to explode instantly. The 4 planets of that star were completely vaporized in the process. How did this happen? We'll get to that in just a few seconds. Luoji's first order as sole Wallfacer is to restore stability and orders everyone home except for Cjbeards, who is confused AF. Together, they walk deep into the desert, where Luoji explains to Cjbeards the mystery behind the spell. And now, the stage is set for the probably most important scene of this whole series. Now, Luoji is about to give Cjbeards a very complicated explanation until he gets to the point, so bear with me. So, before Luoji gets into the mystery behind the spell, he begins to describe the nature of the universe first, using knowledge he learned from studying cosmic sociology. One is that the total matter in the universe is not growing infinitely how we like to think, but rather stays constant. But at the same time, life in the universe grows constantly, establishing the possible existence of millions of civilizations in the universe. Then he explains, and I'm mentioning it the 3rd time in this video, the chain of suspicion, saying that it's not something you see on Earth, but rather in space. It's something that led to the Battle of Darkness, for example. Starship Earth, meaning those 5 ships that attacked each other over limited resources, ended up being so suspicious of one another that it made them eliminate each other immediately. It's something that could be solved with communication on Earth, but gets replaced with this fear and suspicion in space, constantly thinking of what the other side might think. This process causes one to attack each other to eliminate a possible threat. Now apply this to the millions of possible civilizations out there in the universe. But unlike in the Battle of Darkness, the chain of suspicion is not triggered by limited resources, but rather by the sheer fear of other civilizations that might be hostile. Even if you're a technical more evolved one, you might still see a less evolved one as a threat because one day they might get up to your level. So in order to eliminate a possible threat, you only got one option left. The universe is a dark forest. Every civilization is an armed hunter stalking through the trees like a ghost, gently pushing aside branches that block the path and trying to tread without sound. Even breathing is done with care. The hunter has to be careful because everywhere in the forest are stealthy hunters like him. But in this dark forest, There is a stupid child called humanity who has built a bonfire and is standing beside it shouting, "Here I am, here I am." So what's the deal with the spell? Cjbeards finally asks. Luoji compares the spell to a mark carved into a tree in a forest full of hunters. Now what will a hunter think when he sees that mark? Luoji continues. It doesn't matter what motivated someone to leave the mark. What's important is that the dead hand has stretched the nerves of the dark forest to the breaking point. Suppose there is some million of hunters in the forest, and the number of civilizations on the billions upon billions of stars in the Milky Way could be thousands of times that. Perhaps 900,000 of them will disregard the marking. Of the remaining 100,000, maybe 90,000 of them will probe the location, and after confirming that it has no life, disregard it. But one of the remaining 10,000 hunters will surely make a choice to fire on that position. Now that hunter has appeared, Luoji concludes. This is the mystery behind Luoji's spell. What Luoji tested out with it was the dark forest theory. By doxing the location of the star and its 4 planets to the universe, it was one-shotted by an unknown civilization far superior than Trisolaris. In their eyes, they just removed a potential threat without even trying hard. Luoji's plan as Wallfacer is to basically wield a far more superior civilization than Trisolaris lurking out there as a weapon against them. This is why there were 9 assassination attempts on Luoji's life. This is what Yi Wenjie tried to hint at during their conversation at the cemetery. And this is the reason why the second out of 3 books is called The Dark Forest. And if you ever heard of people discussing or covering the Dark Forest theory, it is because of this scene that I've just described. However, the problem is that the Droplet has sealed the signal path between Earth and Sun, so it's no longer possible to send another spell into the universe. There is also another problem. Even if they could broadcast the location of the homeworld of the Trisolarans into the universe, it will eventually reveal the location of the solar system too. A distance of 4 light years between Earth and Trisolaris means nothing to a species who's able to shoot projectiles near light speed. Doxing the Trisolarans would mean that humanity would eventually follow. Which is why Luoji would be stoned to death like Diaz did if the people would find out about the spell. Cjbeards promises to keep quiet about it. Let's move on. The Snow Project. Luoji attends a few Wallfacer hearings next. He finds out that due to his new Wallfacer status, awakening his wife and daughter from hibernation is now blocked again. It's obvious that the people in charge are once again forcing him to come up with results. Luoji says that without the ability to cast a spell, he could do nothing, and so the people of the hearing actually decide to provide him with a task instead. They ask him to lead the Snow Project. They want to use a large amount of hydrogen stellar bombs to create lots of space dust in space all around the solar system. About 3 years remain until the other 9 droplets reach the solar system, so using their space dust, they at least could detect their arrival through the tracks they would leave behind. A really hopeless plan that would give humanity just a little bit more time so that they can try to escape. Nonetheless, Luoji agrees. But the Snow Project never really got on its feet. No one was really interested in a plan that would just slightly increase humanity's escape time. What they want is a strategy that would guarantee humanity's victory. And so, Luoji's new popularity began to shrink immediately. By now, he has developed a drinking habit and begins to neglect his appearance, looking completely broken. Nonetheless, he fully devotes himself to the Snow Project, giving actually his best while working on it, treating it as his way to escape from reality, spending many nights working on it with its team. But the more he devoted himself to it, the more disappointed the public became in him. Also, Luoji declaring on media over and over again that without his spell he wasn't really able to do anything was not helping the situation. 1.5 years later, not even 20% of the Snow Project has been completed. The space dust created by the bombs they launched into space would by far not be enough to cover the whole solar system. And so, Luoji's popularity began to shrink even more. Year 208 of the Crisis Era. Things did not get better after the launching of the Snow Project. The respect and hope the public had in Luoji turned into sheer hatred, and rightfully so. He gave them all hope in victory just to shatter it again. Also, him coming off as broken, neglecting his appearance, his apartment, and so on made things not better. And so, they decide to expel him from his village. They just have enough of him. But Luoji planned to leave anyway, taking only a travel bag and a shovel with him. While walking alongside the streets, he gets picked up by a car with a family in it who all treat him respectfully. But once the child recognizes him as the wall freezer, they throw him out the car. He tries to take a bus instead, but gets thrown out of it as well. As he leaves, someone asks him what he brought the shovel for, and Luoji answers, "To dig my own grave." They all begin to laugh, not knowing that he's not joking. Once outside the bus, he continues to head to his destination on foot. He arrives at his destination, a cemetery. The exact cemetery he had the conversation with Yi Wenjie at the beginning of the Crisis Era. He finds her grave as well as her daughter's, and then begins to dig his own. Running out of stamina, he then falls asleep on the spot, dreaming of his wife and daughter. When he wakes up, everything is set up. He reaches into his jacket, taking out a pistol, and then begins the final showdown between Earth and Trisolaris. He directs his words directly towards the Trisolarans, who are witnessing everything through the sophons, and reveals a big twist. Like Ray Diaz did in Neo 20, he tied a dead man switch to his heartbeat, meaning if he dies, his life signal would be cut off, causing the 3,614 bombs from the Snow Project in space to explode. This would create a dust cloud, not able to completely surround the solar system like in the Snow Project's original plan, but able to make the sun appear to flicker like a disco ball if seen from a distance. Then the sun would be used to send another spell into the universe, bypassing the droplet blocking the signal path by being sent from space, I suppose. But this time it wouldn't reveal the location of some random star, but instead the location of Trisolaris, their home planet. The whole galaxy would be able to receive the signal in just 1 year. Of course, this would reveal the location of the solar system too at some point. After revealing all of this, Luoji points his gun to his chest, announcing that he's gonna stop his heartbeat, basically causing the death of 2 species. Now if you wish, you can continue to remain silent. I'll give you 30 seconds, he says. Oh boy, this is getting intense. About 10 seconds later, the sophons appear before him. They appear in 3 spheres, who are all displaying the same word. Stop. Can I discuss terms? Luoji asks. Through the text displayed on the sophons, they agree. Luoji forces them to cease the blocking of the droplet between Earth and Sun, plus to make the other 9 droplets change direction and head away from the solar system immediately, on top of making the fleet change course as well. They do so. And now relieved, Luoji puts down his gun. His plan has just led to humanity's victory over Trisolaris. Were you already aware that the universe is a dark forest? He asks. Yes, we knew about it long ago, they answer. He then says that he's gonna hand over the system to trigger the spell to the government officials, who probably are gonna ask Trisolaris to lift the sophon block and teach them science and technology next. It is a total victory for humanity, all thanks to Luoji, who has just ended the Crisis Era at year 208 of it, marking the beginning of a new era which definitely will be covered on this channel. But this right here is the end of the Crisis Era. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I feel like a complete madman for making an over 50-minute video as my first one on the channel, in which I basically summarized an entire book in detail on top of that. I am gonna cover the next arc of this series in my 3rd or 2nd video, so stay tuned for that. I'm not into asking people for likes and subscribes, so these things are completely up to you. Anyways, thanks for watching.